Welcome to the Martin Bailey Photography Podcast. It's January 4, 2015, and this is episode 455. Following on from last week when I walked you through my selection process, this week I'm going to tell you a bit about the 10 photographs that I selected as my 2014 top 10. Before we jump in and start to walk through them, I'd like to thank all of you that posted a link to your own top selection for the year against last week's podcast episode. It was great seeing your selections, and I encourage anyone else that's thinking of going through this process to post your link too, either against this week's blog post or last week's. This week's episode will be at mbp.ac/455 if you want to come along and share your photographs. Okay, so here are my 2014 top 10 images. Remember, these are my selections based on the process that I explained last week. You might not think that they're my best photos, or even any good at all, but that's not really what this is about. This retrospective is really about putting a stake in the ground at the end of the year and building a baseline from which to judge our progress each year. I'll go through these in chronological order, starting with this photo that I called Waiting for Clearance. I shot this and the next few images during my winter wildlife tours in Hokkaido, the northernmost island of Japan. On this day, we were having a wonderful snowstorm and the wind was high, so the cranes just seemed to float above the crowd for a while as they looked for a spot to touch down. I had been panning with the crane in flight here and not really paying much attention to the cranes below, so I actually had a bit more room above the crane that I cropped off, making this a 16:9 ratio image. I could have probably moved the camera down some to include more of the cranes below, but something about the end result here just appeals to me. I guess this is one case when, for me at least, the appeal of the photograph overrides the need for any perceived requirement for compositional conformity. My next selection is a tightly cropped photo of a Steller seagull from the start of February. Again, technically there are a few reasons why people might not like this. The face being in shadow is one, and some people are probably going to complain about cropping off the tips of the wings, or the entire right wing in this instance. Personally, I'm finding more and more that I prefer a really tight crop like this, and I often go in much tighter on the eagles and birds in flight, aiming for just this look. I like this particular image because the background is different. I have lots of eagle shots with vivid blue skies, which I actually don't really like, the blue skies thing. It just doesn't really appeal to me that much in normal photography, but here, the dappled texture of the mountains over the fishing town of Daosu, where we photographed these eagles, makes a nice background in my opinion. I called my third selected image Angel Wings, because these wings remind me of the wings that you often see on angels in the movies. I have fond memories of laying on the snow at the edge of the Kusharo Lake with some of the other participants on my tour, just waiting for the swans to rise up and flap their wings like this. Although I wasn't impressed with the 5D Mark III's autofocus on the 200 to 400mm lens for birds in flight, it's still very capable of snapping focus quickly onto a target like this when there really is not a lot of time to focus and grab a few frames while the action lasts. Again, the swans in the foreground bug me a little bit, but I find the image appealing all the same, and so I went for my feeling about the image over technical accuracy. After all, the swans are all in the water together like this, and my photo depicts that accurately. This next photograph is a Steller seagull sitting on a pinnacle of sea ice with the sun rising behind it. This was towards the end of Tour 2 for 2014, and again, I recall the excitement as the skipper of our boat moved us slowly back and forth so that all of my group got a chance to shoot this while the eagle remained perched up there. I decided not to adjust the white balance on this. I generally shoot in the daylight preset, and this helped me to remain and maintain some of the blue feel of the cold dawn ice, because that's really how it feels. This is also one of the few times that I actually use aperture priority shooting mode. Although I usually shoot in manual, at this location at dawn, we sometimes shoot away from the sun, but because we also sometimes shoot light directly into it, it makes more sense to allow the camera to adjust exposure. I generally dial in about plus 2/3 of a stop and run with that for about 20 minutes or so as the day starts, and then go back to manual as I feel much more comfortable in manual mode. Next, we jump 7 months of the year from the end of February to the end of September, and this photo called Jewel on the Shore from my Iceland tour. It doesn't seem that long ago when I talked about this, but I was really happy with this photo. I was set up with an ND filter on, doing some multiple second photos of the sea water as it washed up the beach, sometimes coming up around my ankles as I worked this scene. This was a 4-second exposure too, but I ended up shooting this while the seawater was not high up on the beach, as the sun shone perfectly through a little gap in the larger growlers, and that's actually a technical term for icebergs about the size of a car. The name comes from the sound that they make as they roll along the hull of a ship. I couldn't believe my luck as the light hit the small piece of clear ice, which then focused the light down onto the beach like a prism. Sometimes everything just comes together to create something special, and I believe this was one of those times. My next selected image is of the iconic Skogafoss waterfall in Iceland. I have scores of similar images of these falls now, but I really like the light in this one. The light above the fall seems to be spilling into the photograph, and there was so much spray that it caused the right rock on the right side to be highlighted, and I just really like that look. This was a 1-second exposure with an ND8 filter, and I sometimes go a little bit faster on waterfalls, but 1 second registers a lot of movement, and the mist around the basin of the falls is really nice at this shutter speed. So this is probably my favourite Skogafoss photo to date. My next selected image is a photograph of the Choshi-Otaki Falls in the Oirase mountain stream area of Aomori, the northernmost prefecture of Honshu, the main island of Japan. When I first spoke about this image along with the other shot of these falls a few months ago, I think I preferred the other version from a lower angle, but now this one seems to appeal to me more, probably because there's more full colour in the image than the other version. This is a 0.8 second exposure, again a little bit longer than you need for the waterfall images, but what you need isn't always what you want. I just really like the ethereal feel of the flowing water like this, and there's still a little bit of texture left. Just the balance that I like for my waterfall photographs. You might also remember this shot from that recent episode of the wooden jetty out of the back of a little cafe on the Towada Lake near the Oirase mountain stream area. Another long exposure, this time 4 minutes and 40 seconds. The cloud on the other side of the lake was snow cloud, and the wind picked up, buffeting my camera and leaving water droplets on my lens during this exposure. I was able to remove most of the water droplets in Lightroom, and this became my favourite of a handful of long exposures from this evening. As I mentioned last week, when I submitted this and another version of the same scene to Offset, the stock agency that I work with, they rejected this one for the other one. And, that just makes me like this one all the more. Really, the more I shoot, the more I want my own sensibilities to govern my likes and dislikes. I see no reason to change how I feel about an image based on what other people think. It's my art and it should stay that way. I really want to be true to myself and my heart. Of course, I'm not saying that you should make all of your editing decisions in a vacuum. The role of your trusted critic is vitally important. When editing down sets of images, part of my finalization process is to get my wife to look through them. She's not a photographer, but she has a great eye and she's close enough to me that she knows that she can give me some harsh feedback. And because I trust what she says, I generally listen. You might recall this next image too from episode 450 about productive respites, when I mentioned this and how it ended up being kind of an homage image, as it reminds me very respectfully of Edward Weston's Pepper No. 30. I have had an incredibly busy year and really haven't had a chance to get out with my camera anywhere near as much as I like to, and generally only really when I'm on tour. And I shot this on a well-earned afternoon break in my local park. Black and white flowers aren't something that necessarily spring to mind, but I've been doing more and more of these over the last few years, and I really enjoy this ongoing project of mine. Finally, here's a photograph of a mother snow monkey nursing her baby from a recent visit to the snow monkeys on a private tour that I ran for 4 great clients from Singapore in December. On our 3rd day, the snow really set in, and this mother and child were sat on the wall at the edge of the hot spring bath for quite a while. I ended up with scores of images of this pair, but this is one of my favourites. The baby didn't look up that often, so having this eye contact here was nice, and I just love the look in the mother's eyes as she seems to be just bearing the cold, and you can almost feel the love for the child. I have no idea how much these snow monkeys feel. I doubt that anyone really does, but when you see them like this, it's incredibly special. I love every moment that I'm able to spend with these special animals. In fact, I simply love every moment that I'm able to spend making a living with my camera in my hand. Looking back on the year, I spent a lot of time doing other work. It's all good, of course, and I'm happy with how I'm prioritizing my time, but it really makes me grateful even more for the time that I'm able to actually make photographs rather than being behind my desk. Next year, I'm hoping to hire an assistant that can help me not only with my photography activities, but also with back office tasks as well. I'm at the point now in my business where I'm becoming my own bottleneck, and it's now a high priority task for me to bring someone else on board. Although that task itself is going to be pretty time consuming, I'm sure. Anyway, that's it. That's my 2014 top 10 photographs. I hope that you've enjoyed looking through them with me. A little bit of a flying visit. I'm leaving tomorrow for the first of my winter tours, my Hokkaido landscape photography adventure. And I still have so much left to do that this is about all I could manage this week. So anyway, unless something miraculous happens during the first week, I will probably be skipping an episode next week, but I'll be back in 2 weeks' time with an update. If I'm able to post a few photos from the tour in a blog post, I will do that. So do check in, and if you use an RS feed reader, then the RS feed, there's a link at the top of the blog. So just subscribe and you'll be able to get any updates that I might be able to do while I'm on the road, but I really can't promise anything. So thanks very much for listening today. If you enjoy this podcast, please share a link with your friends, and if you don't already, please subscribe in iTunes or your favorite podcast program to ensure uninterrupted delivery. You can find me on Google+, Twitter and Facebook, etc., and links to everything that I'm up to are at martinbaileyphotography.com. so do drop by and take a look. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time with another episode, but in the meantime, you take care and have a great week, whatever you're doing. Bye bye.